2023 of the Livelihoods India Summit, hosted by Access and co-hosted by Niti Aayog, themed Jobs in the Future, Jobs for the Future. While India has brought down poverty rates, this has not matched an equal growth in jobs. The session will move beyond an examination of what the numbers tell us about employment in India in terms of quantity and quality of the jobs on offer to the question of what can be done about employment generation to drive transformative change in the Indian workforce to achieve equitable economic advancement for all. It is my pleasure and proud privilege to introduce our distinguished panel to you. We have Mr. Arun Maira, former member, Planning Commission of India, as the moderator of the session. I request Mr. Maira to take his place on the stage. Thank you. I would now, can we have a round of applause? It is my pleasure and proud privilege to also invite on stage our distinguished panelists for the session. Mr. Vijay Mahajan, CEO, Rajiv Gandhi Foundation, and founder, Basics Social Enterprise Group. I have been told that Mr. Mahajan is delayed by 5 minutes, so it's absolutely fine. It's quite a wintry morning. Dr. Gayatri Vasudevan, Executive Chairperson, LabourNet. And Dr. Orlando Ruthven, independent researcher and practitioner. I hope the panel is fine in waiting for Mr. Mahajan to reach. Or shall we start? Okay, wonderful. So I would request Mr. Maira to take this session forward. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So here we are in the first plenary. And what is the objective of this plenary? Firstly, I must say I'm so energized by the people that I've already started to say hello to and people that I've learned from over the years. What have I learned from them? You'll just discover I don't know anything enough yet. But the people that I have learned from, and three of them are here, and I've been reading you, and so I've learned your ideas without meeting you. But Gayatri here and Vijay, I have learned from them for many years, and I will continue to today, and so will all of us. So the subject of our plenary today has been mentioned already. It says that this session will move beyond an examination of what the numbers say to the question of what can be done about employment generation to drive transformation to achieve equitable economic advancement. Let's get beyond the numbers. Let's think about the structures of our economy, the shapes of our policies, to see what must change. Because we can't keep carrying on the ways we are with the ideas that we have and expect to address a problem that all of us have assembled here to find better solutions for. As old Einstein said, you can't solve the intractable problems that you're having with the same type of thinking that has caused the problems. This morning's newspapers, I just, on the way here, was reading the papers in the car, and I just tore out from two of our national dailies some news items. The first is here in the Indian Express on the page, economy page, with reports from Davos in Switzerland, where the big leaders of economies and companies are meeting, and our own Mr. Chandrasekhar, the chairman of the most admired group in India, Tatas, with whom I worked 25 years and learned my ideas about good companies, says that for him, the three most important things are growth, growth, and growth. And he talks in there that, we are well on the road to being a $10 trillion economy. The Times of India inside, in City News, Times City says some headline, homeless rescued and shifted to shelters. And this is a report of actually something on the ground, which has happened yesterday, where some people who are workers working in the nearby area in central Delhi don't have places to live and are living on the streets, and they were pulled away by vans and taken to some homeless shelter somewhere else. And they resisted. And this man says, look, I work in this locality. So how will I be able to earn anything if I stay in that home? And clarification here on December 15th, and government order stated that the government had directed the removal of beggars from the streets in coordination with different agencies ahead of various G20 events in the city. I feel we've got two crises. One is as a society, we have a moral crisis. We as a government, as part of it, have a moral crisis. We are hiding our problems of underemployment and poverty. And like in the opening session, let's make a distinction between poverty and underemployment. One does cause the other. And to eliminate poverty in a sustainable fashion, in a dignified fashion, we have to address the question of underemployment. Underemployment. And secondly, we have an intellectual and a policy crisis, which is that the model of growth that we are following is causing the problems that we now want to solve. So where have we arrived today on January 19th of 2023? I think we're acknowledging at last, and the Access report this morning, soil report, makes it very clear that we have a big problem of underemployment in all sectors, in many parts of the countries, maybe the whole country, therefore. But we are not yet accepting that the present paradigm of economic growth is the cause of the problem. We have conceptual confusion, and it's been highlighted in the report and this morning also. One is we have been, as economists, as policymakers, continue to subscribe to the theory that the fewer the people that we have in agriculture, the better off everybody will be. The productivity of agriculture must be improved by getting people out of agriculture and then sending them into manufacturing. And now we recognize that manufacturing doesn't wish to employ more people because it's easier and more efficient to use capital and machines instead. And then we say services, that's good, but even services, including TCS, is using technology to produce outputs. So where are human beings going to be in the economy? Do they have any place in our idea of a good, efficient, growing economy? Rural and urban, and we talked briefly about it on the through our email exchanges. I think the boundaries between urban and rural have completely disappeared. This morning's in the plenary, it was mentioned that there are districts in this country which are as dense as other places that we would call urban areas. And these districts have no hope of ever getting industry in those districts or expect any infrastructure of the urban sorts in there. Urban has become a new policy phrase that the boundaries are not clear, so therefore let's treat the whole system as a rural-urban extension of system. And that, I think, is a good way to look at it. There are no specific urban problems, no specific rural problems, which are not caused by the general underlying fundamental problem that we must discuss today. I'm going to say something provocative, actually, that I'm seeing repeatedly that we must get more women into the workforce in India. We've got too few women in the workforce. And I say, well, ASHA workers, Anganwadi workers, they're in the workforce. And not only them, they're farmers, women who've been in the workforce for decades, and there are many more of them, as well as women doing household work in other houses for pay. Women are in India more women in India in the workforce than any country of the world, except we don't recognize and respect the work that they do and compensate them fairly for the benefits that they provide to society. So we have again a conceptual problem here. What sort of employment and how should those people who are doing work hard to provide value to families and to society be recognized and compensated? So climate crisis, we want to change the shape of nature to fit the requirements of a growing economy, Joshimath and elsewhere. We're trying to change the shape of society, what women do, what people do, to fit the requirements of a growing, measured GDP, measured economy. If we were to, and I'm going to expect all of us and Vijay when he comes too, to let's get up in a satellite and look at the earth. And what we will see, we do see the blues and the greens becoming browns, the climate crisis. If he had an infrared camera up there and could look at institutions and ideas and ideologies, how they are swirling around the world, I think then we'll see what is really causing the problem to the brown and the green and the blue also. So, excuse me, I hope I was clear all this time, but this became pretty loud. We have a bias to action. And I've been in the government myself and I've been in the corporate sector where it's all about get on with the problem and don't pontificate and don't think too much. Just do it. I'm afraid that we are in the darkness, running along a road and not realizing either that it's a dead end, but actually more likely it's a road which is curving back again to the same place that you're trying to get away from. So the ideas with which we are running faster, get on with it, are the very ideas that are going to make the problem that we're trying to get away from worse. So here we have three speakers, and you already have read about them and probably know them, but nevertheless, I'm going to just remind some highlights about, you'll understand why I've learned so much from them. Orlando, I'm going to begin with you, actually, surprisingly, because I've never met her. But when she explained to me what she does and what she has done, I said, I've been following the same course. The same course about, and she mentioned it that, her work is mostly in the urban sector and the service sector, but it is not. Your work for the last 20 years has been in research, operations, and training in employment for sure. But look, you've been working with adolescent girls in Bihar, before that with Gram Vani, Gram Tarang Odisha. For 20 years in this country, you know things from the ground up, reality. Gayatri, it's what a pleasure to have you. Gayatri just mentioned to me that before coming here, she spent 7 days in Rajasthan. Hi. And Gayatri, who is she's been cited as one of the top 50 women in business by Business Today in 2017, an Entrepreneur of the Year in Social Business category by Forbes India in 2018. And she has a doctorate in development studies with 30 publications in the areas of labor, employment, and gender issues. But it's the work on the ground, you're flying around and you really are connected with making things happen on the ground. And lastly, but not leastly, my friend Vijay, who founded Pradhan in 1983. And he's been known to us in India and around the world as one of the great thought leaders and action makers in helping the poor people stand up on their own and make their own lives with dignity. Vijay has been rewarded as amongst the 60 outstanding social entrepreneurs at the World Economic Forum. By the way, I said something quite contrarian about the World Economic Forum. So being honored there, I don't know what you feel about it, but you were. Yes, and that was 20 years ago. I think ideas must change, right? Ashoka Fellow in 2008, and presently Vijay is the CEO of the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation and the director of the Rajiv Gandhi Institute of Contemporary Studies. So we are going to today keep ourselves in that satellite that I said and get from these people who are on the ground, and you will remain there. But what you see from the ground, which is a satellite level picture of the forces that are creating the problem that we have and the ideas that we must change about how we think about employment, how we think about policy, how we think about, I don't know what you might say we need to think about. So I'm going to request each of you, but let's start with you first, and then you, and come this way, Vijay. So get you tuned up to, you don't need it actually. No, I'm needing your... No, but today I'm trying to ask us to do what you always do, is you challenge our thinking. And so what would you in few minutes say, some thoughts you want to put before us to just ding dong, wake us up?
Thanks, everyone. It's a privilege to be here. I want to talk a little bit about the nature of the problem, but I completely recognize your commitment to go beyond that. So I'll try to frame the nature of the problem a little bit as opportunities in a way. One is that there's a counterintuitive relationship between education and employment, right? While it looks as though education should assist towards employment, in some ways it does, it's also related to unemployability. Yeah. So we know that among young people, most of my work is among young people, the 16 to 24 age group. A third of these are neets. They're not in education, employment, or training. Many of them are choosing to stay away because of the nature of the jobs on offer. But they're also having hope against hope of getting certified in order to chase opportunities for good jobs, which are very, very remote and are getting more remote. And the problem with this is that they end up sort of wasting away their youth in a situation of semi-activity, semi-education, going through certifications. And the employers note this. When they do try for jobs, they are disadvantaged on account of age and also on account of so-called gap years, that they've evidently taken since leaving school. Yeah. So that's to paint a little bit detail of the first of our problems, which is the fact that we've got so many first-generation learners among young folks who are not in work. The second problem, which again I'll put as an opportunity, is there's loads of jobs in urban industrial centres. As I said to you in the email exchange, Aaron, we're all becoming very aware of the shortcomings of the growth and the urban industrial model. But we're in such a demographic jam at the moment that we need to grab all the jobs we can. And we still see that most of the jobs are coming up in these places, yeah? Whether it's, for example, the Team Leases reports tell us that the service sector geared metros are still offering many more jobs, growing much faster than everyone else, yeah? So we need to get the kids into those jobs, but the employers can't do it without public policy. And the public policy to facilitate the transfer of young people from labour surplus regions with low growth to labour short regions with high growth is still very shaky and inadequate. And the COVID pandemic just highlighted very, very cruelly just how inadequate it was. And I think now we have a situation where many, many young people who were ready to try their luck in distant urban industrial centres before are shy and fearful to go back because of what they faced in the lockdown trauma. Yeah. And then the third of the problem, again, as an opportunity, and it's in contrast to what you pointed out earlier, Aaron. Of course, we need to evaluate the contributions of young women who are not in paid work. It must be recognized. It's enormous. On the other hand, I just consistently meet young women who really want to get a job and who can't. And it's partly because they're not in the right place for the job, and it's also because they're still dealing with patriarchal norms, which are impeding their mobility. The mobility is confronted at every point. First of all, they're not getting released from domestic load, so that's one reason to stay at home. A second reason to stay at home before marriage is that any mobility is associated with a risk to one's suitable marriage. And a third reason to stay at home after marriage is because there's a very heavy, urgent need to prove fertility, which means they're more often than not encumbered with children very quickly after marriage. But there are openings in this because now we've got so many young women. I'd like to throw out a hypothesis here. I think young women are dealing with such a sharp contradiction. On the one hand, they're offered a full citizenship and a full education along with their brothers. On the other hand, as soon as they reach the top end of school, they are rapidly forced to understand how different their situation is compared to boys. Yeah. On account of dealing with this contradiction, they may well have greater non-cognitive skills than the boys because they've had to become so articulate and clear in terms of dealing with their own situation. So there's an enormous opportunity to satisfy these young women in their desire for wage work, and there's also ways in which we can do it. And I think one of the key lessons of my recent work in Bihar is that there's a scope to work with newlyweds. It may be impossible for a young woman to put off the right kind of marriage, and she may have to behave appropriately until she's in the marriage. On the other hand, if you take the couple together and you can assist them to look at employment opportunities on both sides, and with that, along with that, becomes the perhaps the engagement of the possibility of delaying a family, then you may be able to build very effectively on opportunities, and they may not be at home. They may be on the basis of migration. So maybe that's enough I haven't said much about the sort of interventions which may be
Let's
solutions.
keep that exactly, I think, yeah. Let's not propose solutions until we've examined what exactly must be changed, because we must test our solutions against, are they taking us in the same directions broadly, or are they solutions which are going to create the new paradigm or not? So I did note that I need to be corrected about women, but I'm still talking about women who are working and getting money. Okay? The women farmers, they are doing their work because they need the money and they're getting some money for it, maybe through selling their own produce. The other is women in the domestic, they are out of their homes and they are earning money. So these are women who are earning money, therefore they are in the economy. Okay, but we continue to think that unless we employ women in the corporate sector, they are not employed really, or don't have employment. So we've got to think about the categorization of, as we said, formal education and formal employment. It comes to Team Lisa's report you mentioned about that presently there's a great scramble to get jobs in the urban area and the service sector, because those seem to be the only jobs accessible to people. So it's like there's only one bus that we can all go on. We're all scrambling like in India, and we're on the roof of the bus, inside the bus, and no seats in the bus, and so on. What we need to do is not push more people onto that bus, but to create more buses elsewhere. And so we've got to shift. That what is presently working is not what we want more of. We want something else. So this, again, there's an opportunity, and I like your introduction. Let's think of the opportunity. The opportunity, to my mind, is that India has not gone too far down that road of the formal education and formal employment, and we need to think about what is education, what form should education be, what is employment, what form should employment be, and then talk about the solutions to do that. So this is my take, and I'm still therefore in the question, and to yourself, Gayatri.
So, as I said this morning, I'm in an extremely confused state of mind and therefore couldn't reply to the email. And so I'm going to discuss 5 people and situations that I have met in the last, let's say, about 1.5 months, December 1st to 19th of December. and in each location, and I'll allow you to draw your conclusions from it. The first is the urban jobs that we said. In manufacturing, which has always been an area of great interest for me, the services and manufacturing have been an area of interest, saying that that is where jobs are. We looked at feminizing a industry setup, which is traditionally male. Assembly operators, other than in leather, apparel, and electronics, has been traditionally male. So we did because in the south and specifically in Hosur, there is a lot of feminization of manufacturing. So we thought this is an opportunity. Where we hit the roadblock was, where will they stay? If boys get accommodation at 1,700 to 2,700, girls, and I'm consciously using the word girls because they take only unmarried girls between 18 and 24. So if you're married, you cannot get a job. I was so shocked when I heard that, and we stand party to it. We today have 400 women in this factory. But in Hosur, which is bordering Bangalore, I was horrified to see that there is no accommodation for boy or girl, and it is worse if it's girl. That means the girl will have to pay 3,300 to 3,400 rent on a shared basis, whereas the boy will pay 600 to 700 less. I'm just stating an issue which is there. Second problem is that they would like to have a diploma, which means girls who are doing ITIs, which is the pseudo for diploma, is less. That means your input is less, therefore, your ability to place into these are low. But whatever is happening in manufacturing, I do believe is a huge opportunity for feminizing the shop floor. The numbers are coming down. When I started working, and Vijay was I think the first I saw on the roof. When I heard of him, I was in awe. But when I started working, companies were employing 1,000 people. Today, the same companies where I'm still working are employing 150 people. Rest have moved to service, which is your contractor, civil, things like that. That means large fall due to automation. I'm mirroring what you said. Labor is a cost, labor is not a resource, and therefore you are going to have come down. But that's an opportunity for women because they're not seen as hard work, hard labor. Women cannot do, is the philosophy there. Now I'm going to move to another location, which is again in Karnataka, called Pavgada. Now, all the next four I'm going to discuss are around where solar plants, micro solar plants have come in. And very consciously, I've been visiting those areas because to me there should be huge employment generations. I told you I've been interested in the service sector forever, and I've always thought rural services, urban services should be areas where jobs will there be there, automation cannot happen. Urban company has survived on that. Companies which are delivering on platform services have survived. So in my opinion, why for the poor can the same not be done? The thing which stood out for me is the taluk or tehsil which I started work in 1994. The first area where I lived, I started working. Nothing much has changed other than the road. There is a tar road which goes out there to our center, but access stops at 3:30 in the afternoon. That means if anybody has to come to a center to learn in an education in Canada, cannot move to Bangalore if you're educated. Your access is stopping. And this is for boys. There are 3 industrial estates close by. There is Anantpur, there is Hindupur, and there is Bangalore, which is a city. But you could be as far away from Bangalore as you want. It doesn't make a difference there. So, what services are we talking? What education are we talking? What jobs are we talking? Agriculture is next to nil because of the geography that Pavgada has always had a problem with. There is a problem. I've moved on to Kadapa. When I moved down to Kadapa, what was interesting to me is everybody is educated. And so in Pavgada, 12th pass, graduation, BTech. What is the job that they would get? Software. The dream is a software job. Every person says, I've done a job I would like to do. They have equated data entry with BTech. They have equated, that means they're saying, I will do a data entry job, which is software. This is the fundamental problem that we have. The Telugu speaking do not speak English, do not speak Hindi. How would they come to Bangalore or Hyderabad? 250 kilometers from Bangalore. I'm just telling you the stark difference. Every child I saw there was my same age as my son. They're all in their 18 to 24. Mine is reaching the 24. But what I'm saying is the difference between it is stark. It's stark because the dream is the same. They want to be in the same sector, but the education that has been given is telling them they can reach there. But it is not actually delivering on that. None of them is interested in agriculture. The moment they have finished 12th, they are in college, open college, whatever, distance college, you call it by any name, paper chut gaya, correspondence. The desire to be there is not there. Now I'm going to move to Gujarat and then to Rajasthan. And here I'm talking urban, Vadodara, Ahmedabad. What is evident here is the job has to be mixed, I use the word consciously, with the male. That means I could be a beautician, I could be doing anything in the service sector, but it has to be with my husband. So I'll take another case. There is a hairstylist. The man is the hairstylist. The woman is doing it because she can support the business which is going together. Urban area job that is there. The last that I'm going to do has really put me, I don't know my theory anymore, is Rajasthan. I have been to a village called Chayan, which is about 40 kilometers from Pokhran. Pratapgarh, a village which is again 45 kilometers from there, and Nimach in Madhya Pradesh, and Ajmer, Savar block. In all of these, I have not traveled much in Rajasthan. I want to admit I have been more in the southern areas. I've had deep travel, but here when I look at it, one standing thing which is standing out: all buses stop at 3:30 to 4. It's sort of ringing in my bell again and again, saying if you go out, you could go out only at a particular time. You have to return back at that time. Families are 7 to 8. I'm not saying they're all together. There is an extended family which I'm putting together because the conception across Kadapa, Pavgada, and whether it's Nimach or Chayan, is family is 7 to 10. 7 to 10 members, one member has to migrate out. Who is that chosen one who goes out? Has to send back 50 to 60,000 rupees back home. That is a must, irrespective of the geography that we are there. If we are saying what is standing out, garbage, which is a huge service jobs to me that can happen there in whatever form that is, There is plastic and garbage everywhere. Care jobs are not available. Asha workers are there, yes, but it's sort of you go back into a standstill, which means the entire focus that we have is to bring them to Jodhpur, Ajmer, Delhi, Bangalore, Hyderabad, etc. But what is going to happen to the 6 people who are back there? The 6 people are above 35 years or 40 years of age. They are women, they are children. What are the work that we can give? So I was meeting traders because many of them said silai karenge. Then I went to fertilizer industries saying that, okay, is there jobs there in the local? And then I want to again take one more case and I'll stop here, is OP fertilizers, local, being given as part of the subsidy that is being given 1 liter. So I was looking at where is the packaging done for it, you know? Are there jobs out there? That is done in a 30 lakh investment infrastructure which is there. If I don't know agriculture, so I'm not going to discuss it. I was looking at non farm services jobs, which is care services. That means electricity, water, garbage, appliance repair. In these areas, can we bring it in order for the educated? Those who are 10th pass, 12th pass, who have joined graduation, is there an opportunity? I want to stop with two cases. A man called Ravindra Rathod. Very, and this is a pattern I saw across again, east, west, and I didn't take Odisha. I parked it. That was my October, November visits. But here is this guy stopped, became an auto service mechanic and a taxi driver, owns 3 taxis, drives at 15,000, married a woman who can be a teacher. His point was women can get jobs. Therefore, teaching job is good. I will make her do BCom and MCom, but will not allow her to go far. She has to get there. If she gets there, I'll get her transferred. I have enough connects for it. This was the universal phenomena. That means because of affirmative action, who gets a job in a government sector may be women. They may be exploited to get that, but not allowed to work there. I mean, this guy I have a lot of respect for, but at the same time, I'm just saying when we are talking education and jobs, when we are talking livelihood, when we are talking skill training programs, when we are talking labor codes, I think our, our, we are not dealing with the individual people. What we are doing is we are actually saying, okay, and I'm here going to go to companies like ours. How would I project it? I would project saying 1/3 of my labor force is women. I would project as saying that they get 17 to 25,000 rupees as full-time work if they do 30 gigs a month. If they are temp workforce, they would get this. If there is OT, they would get this. But what we forget is the struggle to get there, is the people who are left behind. And it is the seven who, out of the family of 8 to 9, who will who are not in the labor force, which is what our statistics are telling us, which is what we are not able to get small industries there. They are selling shoes, they are hiring cabs, they are making do. It is the jugad which is making them do. But do we have models? Yes, we have models where we have small industries in the rural areas, but we have urban companies in urban areas, we have big baskets in urban areas, but the rural service, even in district to tehsil to village, just collapses. Life stops at 3:30.
Thank you so much, Gayatri. You put it so well. You're giving yourself hope and me hope by saying we are confused. We are confused. I used to, as a consultant, consult with CEOs of companies, and any CEO who said, "I've got a problem, and I'm fairly certain about where the solution lies," especially in the times of great uncertainty, which companies have been going through, I would say there's no hope. It's a CEO who said, "I'm totally confused." Now there's hope, because now you look around at other ways of reaching your aspirations. Um, so you said very well, it's about individuals and their aspirations, the mismatch between the opportunities that the formal system is offering them, our ways of thinking are offering them, and their aspirations. At the moment, they're matching their aspirations to the limited opportunities that we have. That one bus, the urban job in the service sector they want to get to, we are offering that as that is the right thing, that's the admired thing. And say, let's look at, as you said, and you used 330, the bus example again, let's create more bus services, bus models in other areas so that people can get incomes with dignity wherever they are in doing different things. So we'll come to Vijay, who has for 30, 40 years been helping people where they are, who have nothing, to create their own livelihoods in cooperation with others. But that's the connection I'm making. But I'm saying with you, Vijay, I know that you'll surprise everybody, including me, by saying that's not it. Go ahead.
No, first of all, I'm so delighted to be on this panel because I've deeply admired Orlando's, field work with immersion and thoughtfulness, and Gayatri, of course, is an advanced example of that. And you just heard the kind of places she's been visiting, and I, who take pride in having probably been to every district that one can name. Well, not every, but it's really impressive. It's very impressive where all you have been going and observing. Arun, I have to say that I've stopped responding to your, write-ups, because every time I read, I say, how is it possible for one man to keep producing so much more wisdom, so much insight? And I said, if I send you that mail, you'll think I'm making fun of you. So that's why. No. But it's amazing. Please keep writing. It's amazing how you illuminate us, our thinking, ever so often. And I keep going back to many of your. So please continue to do that. So delightful. मैं हुणे हिमाचल तो आया जी. I just took a train last night from Pathankot. I got off at Jalandhar the morning before because we've been doing some declining industrial cluster work there, and then made it to the Punjab-Himachal border to join the Bharat Jodo Yatra, and then was there for about 15 kilometers in Himachal. So, first of all, the Jalandhar cluster, which used to be a very impressive, Ludhiana is still a very impressive industrial cluster, but Jalandhar has actually seen a lot of decline post the 90s. It's still a reasonable foundry hub, but end products are a real problem. Basically, it's succumbed to Chinese imports, which are not just cheaper, but much better quality. And, along with a colleague who's from the National Law School, Bangalore Public Policy Program, and an engineer to boot before that, from Jalandhar NIT to begin with, for the last 2 years, including 3 years actually, including the 2-year COVID period, we've not been able to come up with a slew of an idea as to what can be done to improve the prospects of a cluster, the Jalandhar cluster. It's really heartbreaking. And this is when, from the time we started this study, India's balance of trade with China was already alarming. But this year, the year that ended 31st March, the total trade was $125 billion. We imported 92 billion, and we exported whatever the remaining, so 20 number. And we had a gap of about $70 billion plus. Now, if you assume that out of that $70 billion, about 40% at least, and that's, I think, an underestimate, if 40% is value added in terms of weight share and profits and things which are totally retained within China, then we've exported about $28 to $30 billion worth of employment to China. That's 4 times the Narega outlay. So talk of confusion, I'm actually, you know, the more I analyze, the more I get depressed, because there's a whole pattern behind this. And I have to admit that part of the pattern, I mean, we, in our consumption preferences, is part of that pattern. Our first of all, consumerism, but B, the need to buy the same item at the lowest price, come what may be its environmental, social, or geopolitical costs. Well, you get all this as a result. So anyway, I was depressed enough, but it was a nice sunny day, and when we entered Himachal, and then also joined part of the walk, I couldn't walk all the 21 kilometers, but uh, you know, I just, there's not much actually you do when you're walking around, because you're just whiling away time. So I said, okay, let me see on both sides, because it's a small road. This is not a main, this is a small stretch of the walk, which is not along a main highway. So I just tried to count if I ever come across any manufacturing or even a processing unit. And starting from 11 in the morning till 5:30, including a 2-hour stop, I did not come across a single manufacturing and only one processing unit. And Gayatri, you know what it was? Plastic waste processing. There's a huge warehouse just by the side of the road with all kinds of, garbage collected. At one level, since I'm also in that work, I was delighted that it's being done. On the other hand, that's the only so-called industry that was set up in all of that Himachal 20-kilometer stretch. But talking to the people there, they said their agriculture is doing well. The term organic is quite widely used in Himachal, and it's there. And actually, I did meet the new chief minister, and in the brief 5-7 minutes conversation that we had, uh, he laid out his vision very nicely. He said that I want to make this into a green state. And he was talking about Apple and all that. He says, "वो तो हो गया, अब हम organic में बहुत काम करेंगे, and horticulture में काम करेंगे, diversified horticulture, and there's a gentleman with me from Punjab, and he was also saying, oh, हमें industry भी लगानी है." So this, before I could say anything, this gentleman from Punjab said, "Saadi chuk ke le jao ji." Matlab, just take ours, It's like we are so fed up of our industry, we're just losing money. So I said, yes, industry is a good idea, but we'll have to be careful, because it can't be the kind that's losing money or not generating employment. And then he said, apple to apple. You know how political people talk. So I said, apple to apple कीजिए. पुराना एप्पल नहीं, आज के वाला एप्पल. So I said, अच्छा मतलब आईफोन असेंबली वगैरह. He said, हाँ जी वो भी करेंगे, और आजकल तो सेमीकंडक्टर भी होते हैं. ठीक है. So I was, it's good to know that at the political level they're thinking about it, because 3 years ago when I proposed a silicon carbide power electronics hub in Chhattisgarh, and actually brought one of the world's great experts from Taiwan to argue that it was the right time to get into the third semiconductor bus the first two we missed in India, we were not only laughed out of court, but everybody thought it was a joke. But somebody in the Ministry of Electronics came to hear that Professor Yishi Chang was in India, and I got a call, and they said, Chhattisgarh, wrong place. Chandigarh, right place. Semiconductor complex. And that was the last I heard of Professor Yishi, because he was then adopted as a mentor by the MIT. And 2 years later, one knows that the government has committed $10 billion to the new semiconductor fab. Of course, in the meantime, a lot of things happened. So, Gayatri, every one of the examples that you gave, I live with them, and I agree with you that the life is, for those who are left behind, is really difficult. But at the same time, we have to continue to strive to identify opportunities sectorally, spatially, for growth, and growth which is sort of which will not require too much subsidies, maybe after the initial startup period, and which generates a large number of jobs. So to summarize this whole Himachal story, I was on the way back. I knew that sometime or the other I'll get called to make a presentation, so I started formulating in my mind, and I think GDP, at least for Himachal, should be green, digital, and people-centered. Yes. Certainly the word gross in GDP is the only one that I agree with it. Yes. It's time we did away with its grossness, So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I'm getting some clarity. Thank you, Vijay. From not because of what you said, because how things are coming together. I'm getting some clarity. And you mentioned about China and India and the trade imbalance. When I was in the Planning Commission, our ambassador to China, who's presently our External Affairs Minister, requested a special meeting of the National Security Council and requested me, as a person who's supposed to be knowing industry, to be present. And what he said is that India's become a colony of China. I mean, it was a shock in the room. He said, well, what is a colony? You send your raw materials and you get finished products from them. And it's been done to us before. Yeah. And we are going along with it under this notion that free trade and open up yourself and don't resist buying things from others, because they may be better for your consumers. And the people in India are buying the Chinese products. As consumers, they feel better off. But as citizens, as people who need to earn with dignity, we are worse off. So in the guidance of the economy of the world and our own economy, protection, I mean, we talk about building local capabilities, which is what we need. We describe it as Atmanirbhar as protection. And protection is a bad word. But building your own capability, isn't that a good thing? But it's dismissed. Any effort to support local small enterprises, and I'm glad what we heard from the Secretary MSME in the opening plenary. I worked on the MSME sector in the Planning Commission otherwise, and said, but this is Gandhian idea about local small enterprises and the people's helping themselves with each other in their own villages. Can't we get to becoming a modern economy? And you worked in Tata's and you advise big people. Why don't you help us to create those things? Why don't you help us to create large formal enterprises? And like we discussed earlier, they are disappearing. They are informalizing the work that they do also. And they are, in terms of total economy in the world, they're reducing in size. So come back to what we need to focus on, and I got the clues. As the secretary this morning also pointed out that actually, Vijay, that he says, yes, we are dismayed like you and I are at the conditions of our clusters, like Jalandhar, before that, Ludhiana goes on, and many others. But we are looking at clusters in the formal concept of, from the industry point of view, what a cluster should do. But a village industry in a Gandhian model is a cluster, isn't it, of relationships between people and various sorts of economic activities. So different models of an enterprise, which is a social enterprise. Yes, it is about people connecting as people and in the process helping each other economically also. We have the model in India, so that's the hope I have. It's once again being reaffirmed, and people are beginning to recognize in the world that if we wish to solve the problems of inclusion in the economy, incomes decently, and also create more kind societies, as well as take care of the environment, we need local system solutions produced cooperatively by people where they are. They have to understand they are part of a system, each of them. And to be taken as a resource somewhere else from where you produce and send money back, as you said, they're disconnected with their own system and the system is breaking down. So there is a model, and this model is your foundation, is validating the model, but you find it hard to talk to others to say this is the model because you're told immediately, oh, wo to Gandhi ji ki baat thi. Aren't we going to become modern now? Aren't we going to join the global trade? And Davos has been the megaphone of globalization, but I'm glad to hear that New York Times reporting that they don't seem to be getting that sort of attention that we all been giving them so far. So there is hope. Small is beautiful. A woman's way of thinking must be the way we organize, not a man's way of thinking of a large scale, formal, top down controlled organization. I think women in their families, my wife, my mother, they had great power, but my goodness, they weren't treated as the boss. So, a woman's way of working and organizing, nature's way of working and organizing, not our mechanical organizational way of organizing, is going to be the path through which, the lens through which we will see that actually there are solutions already, and we must respect them and build more of them and see what they need to support them. In the sessions to follow, there will be people sitting here, and you'll see them one after the other. Shiv Kumar, then from BRAC, and so on, and yourself here, of course, working the new solutions. And I'm glad that this conference is going to give them the respect and the platform. And let's magnify, let's make their voices the loud voices and no longer the voices from the people on the ski slopes of Davos. I'm just using colorful metaphors. I think, if you don't mind, if we'd like to ask some questions to you people, I think they have the opportunity. So any questions, please, to any of the persons over here? We have a time. Let's see if you have questions. And then, based on the questions, you might like to interrogate each other also.
और हिंदी में भी पूछना चाहे तो
हाँ,
हिंदी में प्रश्न पूछिए
हम देख रहे थे तो वो तो हमारी दैट्स द होप आई हैव कि देखिए जो कौन बैठे हैं पगड़ी पहन के बैठे हैं औरतें बैठी हैं इट्स देयर वे ऑफ थिंकिंग दैट वी वांट टू हियर बट देयर वे ऑफ थिंकिंग anybody else doesn't matter let's not put people on the spot and if there's nothing immediately I think you've been wanting to say something yes please
As I said when I was speaking, I've focused very much on my experience is very much about helping young people into big urban industrial enterprises. But there's, of course, multiple ways in which that falls down, which everybody here has been discussing. There's just one more way in which it falls down, which has hit me in the face in terms of the concern about on-the-job training. Yeah, so on-the-job training has been much abused in India. I feel we've moved towards the large sector to try to push apprenticeships and on-the-job training through the various skilling schemes. But what we hear consistently from young people is that they don't really learn much. They don't get learning opportunities in the large sector. And within even with the efforts to to reform the apprenticeship scheme, which the government has made. It's certainly made it more attractive because it's less bureaucratic for the employers. On the other hand, what we tend to see is perhaps a more competent third-party training provider giving some classroom time, or maybe it's online, while what the employer does on the shop floor with those people has not really changed. Yeah. So I think this whole issue of who all is a nurturing employer, I think it's a question which isn't discussed enough. And I suspect we will find amazing stories of learning in the small sector and the more local sector if we go out to look for them. And I know, Vijay and many others have already worked on this, but it's glaring us in the face. So, you could say that not only are there many problems from an ecological and a growth perspective with the big scale, there's also a problem related to learning, that the kids benefit from the exposure of running off from Orissa to Bangalore, for instance, but they may not be benefiting much from the skill development, because of the nature of those automated roles. The division of labor is so tight, the pressure to be in a specific role. Within 2-3 months, they've basically got the gist, and then they're not able to learn much more. Whereas the traditionally small firms, by necessity, they've led their new entrants through a whole range of functions, and you need to get the whole picture of a small firm in order to be able to be productive in it. Yeah, thanks.
Again, you're helping to clarify the question that we must answer. You're saying learning and earning must go together. And there's a good reason of the process by which one learns is that if one's doing something, then one learns it well. And learning in the context in which it is done, one becomes to have sensitivity to how one's work fits in with the system. So apprenticeship, yes. In Germany, it's the way that they have grown, and their industry has remained resilient in spite of their Deutschmark going up earlier. And they therefore are very successful with China even today and don't fear China, unlike the Americans do. So this learning while earning and earning while learning a system, which is the old apprenticeship system in which people learn their crafts anyway. But we think that it's a bad system. It is not a bad system. It's the only system that will solve the problem. However, people do have difficulties. They're not able to earn enough. Even the fellow who is employing the apprentice is not earning enough, so he can't pass on. So we come down to the ability of an enterprise, a village, a small enterprise, to be able to sustain itself, to nurture itself. So that's the policy framework that I think we should be looking at. It's not the education sector and then the manufacturing sector. And we had in the government the big problem, where do you put vocational training? And it's going on, this ding-dong battle within the government. Does it belong in the education sector or the industry sector? So finally we create a separate ministry, which makes the problem even worse, because they should be connected directly. That's your field.
No, I just wanted to come in here, as with Orlando, it's been an area where we've worked very closely. The new education policy actually talks of vocationalization of education, both school education as well as college education. And the interesting thing is, whenever you're thinking of skill, one is thinking of vocational skill as a lower order skill. And I again want to take examples of what it would mean to transform that, right? Like, for example, when you took Punjab. Punjab is one of the first states. Haryana and Punjab, Himachal were the first states which actually brought vocational education into schools. So they brought apparel, construction, and we're all a party to blame, etc., to run those programs. But I would take Punjab again as a very interesting example. When in school in 9th to 12th, you bring it instead of a third language. So assuming you're teaching health, which is called GDA, General Duty Assistant, we're not giving the career path, and that school does not have a biology lab. So when you're vocationalizing, the marrying of the rest of education to vocationalization is equally important. So now, given the thrust, that means the IT lab which is going to be there needs to be universal. The adjacencies in order for the vocation to go. Similarly, I'll take the example of Himachal, where we've been working for the last 7 years with retail and hospitality. It doesn't mean you have to go to JW Marriott, but the steps to go to JW Marriott is very, very interesting because it does have hospitality. The sales has changed today. Today, there's no more sales distribution. So, there are opportunities for us to earn and learn better. I'll again give one last example again. What we did in Odisha was we registered graduates from KISS into the KITS and the KISS programs, as apprentices who are going to work with not-for-profit organizations. Because, and just like you have the McKinseys and the whatever EYs who are working with the district collectors, we said let them work at the BDO level as apprentice. And the interesting thing was we took all graduates who are BA. You have something called degree apprentice, right? So in that, what I observed is the basic skill sets for observation needs to be taught. Excel is not available. So that means the students' ability to be useful to the BDO was on their Excel skill set. We focused for considerable time saying Excel seekho, PPT seekho, and observe. Go to the no task. Just go and observe. We call them eco fellows with government. We launched it. What was interesting is that these people came back with a very interesting observation. Ikat saris are not done in the rainy season. Everybody thought because fiber is getting spoiled. Then we got Chinese fiber is coming, not local, all kinds of things. No such problem. Problem is the thatch roof waterfalls. So the moment we got a 10,000 rupee subsidy from government to construct it, people are able to manufacture. These students did it by observation, Excel, and PPT. Just three skill sets which you need to bring into your education. So, where I'm coming from is vocationalization does not mean I have to teach everybody to be a plumber. I need to have the skill set which is relevant. And the NSQF is a good framework. We just didn't understand the framework. So, we need to teach maybe financial. What is that which is relevant for BCom? It is not necessary that everybody learns tally, everybody learns to be a GST accountant, but we've not married the two together. So the time has come to use the NEP as, in my opinion, the North Star. Look at our curriculum, look at our employment, and marry it to see how am I going to do work-enabled education. Not enough research goes on how do I teach dexterity, how do I teach communication. We've done it like a cake on an icing. There's cake. On top of that, I'll do 20 hours of communication. I'll do 10 hours of entrepreneurship. I'll do 20 hours of financial. No, we need to bring it in gradually over this period of 4 years and 3 years, which students are doing today. Our GER in education at each stage is improved. We don't have as much dropouts as before. So the opportunity is there for us, to bring it in. And that's why I was seeing these rural areas for the last year. Post-COVID for me has been just that saying, where will you bring services? Where will you bring work-enabled education? Earn and learn is the method. NEP gives it. The Apprenticeship Act gives it. The BVOC gives it. The framework is there. Now the labor codes are going to come with a different problem. I don't want to enter that now, but it's important to understand it and bring it together. And that's this decade of opportunity for us. Sorry, I got excited, Olanda, but it's
Vijay,
really
Vijay,
something.
Yeah. मुझे लगता है कि ऑडियंस में बहुत सारे साथी और बहन हैं जो शायद हिंदी में थोड़ी बातचीत हो तो अच्छा लगेगा आपको। जी जी। तो अभी तक हम लोगों ने जो बातचीत की उनमें जो समस्याएं हैं उनके बारे में तो आप लोग हमसे ज़्यादा समझते हैं। उनके लिए उपाय क्या हो सकते हैं उसके बारे में कुछ विचार हो रहे थे। तो एक अनुभव जो मेरा रहा पिछले ढाई साल का, वो संक्षिप्त में आपको बताना चाहता हूँ। जब कोविड में जब बहुत सारे लोग शहरों से, बड़े शहरों से वापस अपने अपने ज़िलों में आ रहे थे, तो उन ज़िलों में पहले ही आजीविका की समस्या थी, इसीलिए वहाँ से ज़्यादा माइग्रेशन हो रहा था। और फिर लोग वापस आए तो और बेरोजगारी बढ़ी, और फिर वहाँ से बाहर से जो पैसा आता था वो भी कम हो गया, तो बहुत समस्या हुई। तो हमने जो 30 ऐसे ज़िले चुने जहाँ से पलायन काफ़ी होता था, 7 राज्यों में, सब हिंदी भाषी, और हर एक ज़िले में एक एनजीओ, स्थानीय एनजीओ के माध्यम से हमने छोटा कार्यक्रम था, तो 50-50 2 बैच में 25-25 ऐसे लोगों को सिलेक्ट किया जो वापस आ गए थे या जो निवासी थे, कभी प्रवासी नहीं थे, लेकिन जिनमें उद्यम की कुछ क्षमता थी। उद्यमी बनने के लिए एक गुण होता है, हर एक व्यक्ति उद्यमी नहीं बन सकता है। उसको अंग्रेजी में अचीवमेंट मोटिवेशन बोलते हैं। एक बहुत बड़े प्रोफेसर थे हार्वर्ड के, डेविड मैक्लेलैंड, उन्होंने भारत में ही 1960-61 में अध्ययन करके अचीवमेंट मोटिवेशन करके एक गुण निकाला था कि जिसमें ये अचीवमेंट मोटिवेशन होता है ज़्यादा, वो अच्छा उद्यमी बन सकता है। और यही नहीं, उन्होंने उसके लिए फिर एक पूरा एक ट्रेनिंग प्रशिक्षण का कार्यक्रम बनाया कि वो गुणवत्ता कैसे बढ़ाई जा सकती है। तो वो कार्यक्रम मुझे पहले से, मैं उसके बारे में जानता था और मैं खुद भी किया हुआ हूँ, इसलिए मुझे लगा कि शायद इसको हम इस्तेमाल करें। तो उसके माध्यम से वी सिलेक्टेड पीपल who had high achievement scores, and it was COVID time, तो लोन माइक्रो फाइनेंस इंस्टीट्यूशन दे नहीं पा रही थी, बैंक दे नहीं रहे थे, और जिस संस्था में मैं काम करता हूँ वो तो लोन देती नहीं है। तो बड़ा खिसिया के मैंने इन लोगों से कहा कि देखिए, उद्यमी बनने का प्रशिक्षण तो हम आपको दे सकते हैं, लेकिन उसके लिए पैसा तो कहाँ से आएगा, ये मतलब कोशिश करेंगे, लेकिन मतलब I was very embarrassed after a while that what a stupid thing I have done. Having started with microfinance all the time, there was no finance to give. But my colleague जो मेरे साथ थे, दीपांकर रॉय साहब, जो अचीवमेंट मोटिवेशन के ट्रेनर है, उन्होंने कहा कोई बात नहीं, ये भी एक अचीवमेंट टेस्ट है। और सारांश में मैं आपको ये बताना चाहूँगा कि 1500 लोगों के साथ हम लोगों ने काम किया। उसका 2 साल के बाद का इम्पैक्ट असेसमेंट रिपोर्ट अभी आया है। उसमें से 1432 लोग आज की तारीख में भी काम कर रहे हैं। कुछ लोगों की मृत्यु भी हो गई कोविड की सेकेंड वेव में, और कई तो अनबिलीवेबल कहानियां हैं। और मैंने उस पर करीब 10-12 लोग के ऊपर तो अभी वीडियो बना भी लिए हैं, जो अभी रिलीज करेंगे। लेकिन जैसे एक लड़का था जो ITI के फाइनल ईयर में था, इलेक्ट्रिकल रिपेयर सीख रहा था, उसको डिप्लोमा भी नहीं मिला, घर बैठ गया। तो उसने ट्यूशन शुरू की, और पहले 3 महीने में ट्यूशन से 3000 रुपये उसने बचाए। और फिर उसने देखा कि बच्चों को स्टेशनरी, कॉपी किताब की भी ज़रूरत होती है, तो उसने वो भी सामान रखना शुरू किया, तो वो बिकने लग गई। तो धीरे धीरे उसने अपने घर में एक छोटी सी दुकान बना ली, और उसमें वो थोड़ी बिजली की आइटम भी रखने लग गया। मैं उसको, ये छतरपुर में है, मध्य प्रदेश में, मैं 2 महीने पहले मिलने गया था। जब मेरे पास फोटो भी उसका, उसने कहा सर, ये यहाँ जो माल पड़ा है ये 2 लाख रुपए का माल है। मतलब पिछले 18 महीने में 3000 से 2 लाख रुपए में पहुंच गए जी। तो इस तरह के बहुत सारे, और महिलाओं के भी। तो कहने का मतलब ये है कि अगर हम उद्यमिता की ओर जाएं, स्वरोजगार की ओर जाएं, that is another, I want to tell my 2 fellow panelists that, in a quest to keep looking for jobs, I think we have to confront the reality that there's just not enough jobs in the economy. And a lot of people will have to be self-employed. Now, one is just self-employment as a, because that's martha kya na karta. But the other is self-employment as an opportunity. And so we need to sift between those who are entrepreneurial self-employed and make them like super franchisees, and let the others become either their workers, employees, or their micro franchisees. इसका एक एग्जांपल कल मैंने हिमाचल में देखा, एंड आई विल स्टॉप विद दैट. एक छोटा 3 जगह मैंने एक सेम फीड ब्रांड का बहुत अच्छा दुकान फ्रंट था. तो आई द थर्ड शॉप आई स्टॉप्ड एंड आस्क्ड हिम कि ये कहाँ से आती है. तो ही सेज कि ये पालमपुर से आती है, दिस फीड. एंड बेसिकली दैट फीड manufacturer decided that he will work through local franchisees. So he's upgraded the distributors into kind of, veterinary educators and stuff like that. And through that process is creating So what I mean is, those local entrepreneurs feel that there's a bigger force behind them. You're not a lone ranger self-employed. So that strategy, what I call micro franchisee, could be another strategy that we should.
Excellent,
Thank you.
Vijay. Thank you. Okay, we've got just 2 more minutes, and I'm just going to take a stab at what I have learned. Firstly, I've got great hope. I've started with the morning and saying that big problem, and we're thinking about it all in the same way, and we will not solve the problem. What I'm hearing here is some very fresh ways of approaching the problem that we have to solve, and they resonate with me. What am I hearing? Gayatri, you said that we are now in a decade of bringing opportunities together. And I'm hearing many opportunities. We have to work together collaboratively. My solution is not the solution. It is a part of the solution, and so yours. Working together collaboratively with many ideas, but they all should hold together in the narrative. It should be the same story and not competing stories. What is the narrative? What is the narrative? Your thought about David McClelland's work about entrepreneurship. An entrepreneur emerges in a crisis of condition. Things are not working well. Things are bad. He is suffering. She is suffering. He converts that into a crisis of aspiration. I want to find a solution to this problem. And there's a tension because the present ways in which the system is working and you're thinking will not produce the solution. So you have to think out of the box. That is what innovation then comes. So, as you said, there are people within our country who are the most oppressed by the present system who are producing these new innovations. So youth converting themselves into innovators, not just solving a technical problem, a new version of the Apple iPhone, but an innovation in the way their own little system is working. There's one point though, I mean, you use the words, so I just want to call them out. I think a person who becomes an entrepreneur, the enterprise the person grows, should not be engaging others with workers. You said that, but then you went on to say it's like a franchisee model. And that, I think, is we need a different form of enterprise in which people are collaborating with others, but every person is free and owning themselves, their own labor, and the little resources that they have with them. So these forms of cooperative growth of a society and the economy, I'm calling it the Gandhian one again, is what we need more of. We need more of. So fortunately, in the sessions afterwards, I'm anticipating we are going to hear how people have taken this idea, working this idea, and producing results on scale, actually. And they are confronting, as Shiv Kumar will probably share with you, that the present ways of thinking and supporting these enterprises, unfortunately, brings their own way of thinking into them. Meaning, like you said about entrepreneurship assistance to small scale, we've got a way of what we think an entrepreneurship system should be designed for, and we'll give people money to do it that way. And people who are doing it naturally well are then distorted and they get co-opted into a failing system, But there is hope here, and thank you very much for inviting me to moderate a session with, as you have seen, three marvelous thinkers with great experience and insight. So thank you, three of you. Thank you, and thank you all.
I thank all the panelists for this thought-provoking discussion. I am sure the deliberations have helped each one of us to develop a shared understanding and to look at fresh ways of approaching the employment challenges. Thank you so much, the panel, and I would request the panelists to be felicitated with a goodie bag from Access Development Services. Thank you so much for your time. Yes. So we would be having a quick networking break. The tea is served at the back side of the Sovereign too. I would also request you to reassemble for the fireside chat, which will start at 11:50 a.m. So it's a quick 15-20 minutes